You got a minute?
You must be part of my hangover.
And I hope the wax in your ears didn't stop you from hearing, pal.
I'll remember your face.
I'll try to forget yours.
What about the bartender?
I let him have it over the head with a peanut machine. Run along, darling, before I fracture your spine.
Is the gun loaded? You want to find out? No, I'm happy at just guessing.
You don't have to say anything and you don't have to do anything.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
If you're the police, where are your badges?
I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Welcome to the Speakeasy NoirCast, a podcast discussing film noirs of yesterday and neo-noirs of today. Each week, we're going to deliver a discussion of our analysis of classic noir films, and occasionally we'll interview up-and-coming directors and writers of new neo-noir films, all mixed in with our unintelligible banter. Your hosts for the show, Jason D. Morris and Carly Street.
Must have got knocked down in a storm or something.
It's a pretty selective storm.
What are they doing?
Can we just leave, please?
Dude!
In this dirty old part of the city.
Maybe we missed the sign for the highway.
We didn't miss the sign.
When the sun refused to shine.
Can I help you?
We got on a detour off the highway and cell service around here.
Got your family with you?
Yeah. I was wondering if you could point me in the direction of the highway.
Not a problem.
God damn it.
Jim, we're driving in circles. You drove out this way. How did we get back here? Oh my
God! Everybody in there okay?
This is impossible.
Yeah, it is.
Where are we?
I know none of this makes sense yet, but everyone in this town has been exactly where you are right now. Everyone sees the tree. Those groves.
We'll just get out of here, please.
Abby.
We are stuck.
We didn't come here. We were brought.
What are you doing?
I'm checking to see if they moved.
If what moved?
The trees.
It's important for you to understand what happens after dark.
Lock your door. Nail your window shut. You do these things, your family's gonna be safe.
Safe from what?
I've missed you so much.
Megan, what are you doing?
Maybe I can come in.
This is what happens when you break the rules.
We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do.
They're coming.
There's only so many places we can go.
We gotta get out of this place.
What are they?
If it's the
You believe in monsters.
Please don't.
A man protects his family.
Get these people home, Sheriff.
Do everything I can.
Promise me.
we gotta get out of this place.
All right, folks, that was a television trailer for the TV show From. From is an American science fiction horror television show created by John Griffin, who actually hasn't done a whole lot. Like, he wrote on that Twilight Zone reboot, one episode. Maybe he was part of the writer's room, but only got one episode credited. And then from there, he just kind of had his own show. I think it was some teen space show, Cluster, maybe it was called. I can't remember. And then went from that to From. So the guy's doing pretty well right now. I guess so, yeah. The first season premiered on February 20th, 2022 on Epix, which is no longer around. which I guess Epix was a part of MGM at the time or whatnot. There was a TV station when I had cable, but I'm not even sure if that's a thing anymore. And I think this was their sort of like premiere, what do you call it? Like original, Epix original or whatever. And it stars Harold Perrineau. Harold Perrineau. I don't know. I have no idea. Perrineau. Yeah. Catalina Sandino Moreno. Eon, I think it's Eon Bailey. David Alpay. Elizabeth Saunders. Scott McCord. And Ricky He. The names got easier as the list goes on. The series has received
maybe
critical...
to your ears, Jason. I've still got your pronunciation stuck in my brain from when you first started going. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you mean bloodsuckers?
Yeah, you lost me there.
I lost you there. You lost me there. You're the one mispronouncing suckers.
I knew you were going to bite that.
Yeah. Hey, pun intended. The series has received acclaim for its story, directing, and performances of the cast, particularly Harold. I'm just going to use his first name. In April 2022, the series was renewed for a second season. So that's just like 2 months after it aired, right? March, 2 months after it aired. Which premiered on April 23rd, 2023. In June 2023, the series was renewed for a third season, which premiered in September, which is odd. I wonder why it was. Maybe it had something to do with the strike, that things got pushed differently. Or maybe they were premiering it late in the year because of they wanted it more seasonal, like with Halloween. That would kind of make sense. I don't know. Who knows? Before we get too far into this, I'm going to start calling you... No, that doesn't work. I was going to say Scarly because it's Halloween season, but Scarly isn't Scarely. Instead of Carly. Don't listen to me. I'm an idiot. Carly needs to do her in a nutshell synopsis. And now it's time for Carly's super famous in a nutshell synopsis.
I've got two.
Sweet. It's always fun when you have two.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one's usually like really good and one's usually really terrible. And so there's always one to make fun of. So don't make them both bad, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, that wasn't an agreement going into this. Okay. So, the first one is a group of people get systematically tortured in a freaky small town for all of our amusement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like going to Disneyland and just watching people being tortured. Or the zoo. It's like going to the zoo. That's what it is.
And the second one is Little House on the Prairie on acid.
There we go. Little House. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Oh, man. Michael Landon's turning in his grave. Oh, boy. Yeah, I mean, so, did you ever watch Person Unknown? I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
No.
TV show. Okay, I know Troy did, and folks at home, Troy is one of our producing partners at Resurrection Films. I know he's watched Persons Unknowns. So Persons Unknown was a short-lived series that only went for 13 episodes, and I only think that they aired like maybe three episodes of it.
I hate when they do that.
Yeah, so do I. But this was the time. It was probably Fox, if I remember right. No, I'm wrong. It was NBC. Yeah, usually they let things go a little longer. But so it's very similar to From, as these people just wake up in this small town, very much like From, and they have no idea how they got there or why, but there's cameras everywhere and they're being observed. And so it's mysterious in the same sort of thing where they're trying to figure out how to get out and they can't, and why all this is happening to them, sort of thing. But it really reminds me a lot of From. And then there was also, and I would, if you guys can find it out there somewhere, it's a great show. It's real fun to watch. But also there was a show that's more recent called Wayward Pines, which I think was produced by M. Night Shyamalan. And it very much reminds me of From as well, where it's in a small town where all these people live, and there's this wall that's kind of protecting them, and there's creatures outside the wall. And that was pretty fun too, but it got a little too crazy for me towards the end of the show. But I still had the same sort of like mystery and, vibe that From does. A lot of people are comparing From to Lost, but it's not really, I don't know. It's kind of, I guess it has some similar themes, but I don't know. It's not really, it doesn't have the same vibe to me, as Lost.
No. I get them. I get maybe the frustrations with Lost and comparing it in that way of wanting to know more and wanting to see more and wanting to have more answers. But I agree with you. I don't think the vibe is anywhere near.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling
I
of
agree.
it,
I mean,
it's just totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I did want to point out before we really start talking about like the story and the show itself is the opening theme song, Que Sera Sera, whatever will be, will be. I genuinely thought that was Tom Waits singing that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. It is the Pixies. And I was kind of blown away to find that out doing research for the show. And people are probably like, oh my God, how did you not know or whatever. But there's not actually a lot of information out there about the Pixies doing this. But I thought it was pretty interesting. And it's such a great rendition. I love the song opening.
Do you know what? That opening as well is like mesmerizing, because when I started watching From, Street used to sit in the other room playing his PlayStation game. And every time the theme tune came on after, because I watched the entire series in a day, pretty much like the first series, just nonstop. And
by series, folks, like, she means first season.
Whatever. And he'd pop his head round on like episode 3 as if to say, again? Really? Tell you what happened 2 days ago, Jason. He came.
He probably just thought you had the song on repeat.
I think he might have. He came in and he sat down and he went, that fucking weird theme tune? And I went, yes. And he went, what's episode 1 with you? Yes. Boom. And now he's hooked. He's hooked as well.
Nice.
You're welcome. Nice. It drew him in from another area of the house eventually.
Yeah. You've turned him into a bloodsucker.
I have. Oh, yeah.
Speaking of bloodsuckers, I tried to get my daughter to watch, I asked her if she wanted to watch like a scary movie for Halloween, because I'm going off on a trip and I won't be here for Halloween. And she agreed finally. So I was trying to introduce her to the movie Fright Night, the 80s movie. Because I love Fright Night. Great movie. And we're watching it, and she seems like she's into it, but man, halfway through the movie, she just conks out. She falls asleep. And I'm just like, no. I'm like, damn it. Right when it starts getting really good. But I gotta say, Stephen Jeffries in that movie is just amazing. Like he's just so great in that movie. But anyway,
he's a good black sucker.
Yeah, right. You're so cool, Brewster. Yeah, but anyway, I'm off topic. So, Carly, I want you to go through your perception of why you think that this movie or this show represents noir. in your opinion, through your eyes?
This is just because you want to laugh at me for not being technical.
No. You don't have to be technical. Just make it plain English, and
that's
totally
the
fine.
challenging part.
Yeah. If you're going to use words like soccers, then maybe we should skip this.
Well, all those soccers were really good. Do you know what it was? It's the look and it's the feel. And I know it sounds really silly, and I can't technically explain it. But in my head, what I love so much about it is that when I first started watching it, because I just put it on, I wasn't intending to watch it properly. I just put it on, and it's the feeling that I used to get when I used to watch film noir, and it's the same feeling that I got when I first watched a neo-noir. And I'm looking at the screen and I'm watching what's going on, and I'm looking at all the gorgeous imagery of like the motel sign flashing, and I'm watching this character and I'm like, got that feeling again.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's it, really.
Just a feeling. Yeah. All right. Just a feeling.
And a look of it.
And a look. Yeah. So when you talk about the look, I sort of disagree with that one, because I think, I do have a sort of issue with shows like From, Wayward Pines, Persons Unknown, where they feel cheap to me because there's little to no lighting. Like everything is exterior, and it's shot in Canada. So everything's overcast, so they don't have to do a whole lot of like work in that respect. And so it has a sort of cheaper vibe to me, and it relies heavily on the diversification of the actors and individual characters, which having ensemble casts like that, but also having a lead character, like, to me, I've got a problem with it because I feel like it's almost like it's a crutch that they do. So like if they don't know where they're taking the story, it's like, oh, well, let's just I don't know, let's explain this person's backstory. You know what I mean? Like it gives them like, we need another week to kind of figure out what we're gonna do with the lead and the main story. Let's pick a background actor and like give them a story. And
see that's so weird though, because I kind of like that, because I agree that as it moved forward, my ideas of it being a noir started to move away because you had more inside. It started to have its own kind of look and feel that was different to the pilot and maybe the first couple of episodes. So I agree in that sense. It kind of went away from what I initially was exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But by that point, I'd already kind of got invested in it. I kind of got swept up in the madness of it. And I did want to know more. I did want to look at the guy behind the bar and go, what's your story?
Yeah. I totally get that, because I know I'm well aware that people do kind of like that kind of thing, or we wouldn't have so many ensemble casts. And it takes away some of the work that the lead has to do, because being on a show that's X amount of episodes can be a lot, especially if you're like in every scene of the show. I'm aware it helps them out quite a bit and not have to carry everything, which is great. And I think that's probably makes it easier and cheaper for production. But it always kind of like it always makes me feel, and it's probably unwarranted, or maybe it's 100% true, I'm not sure, but it makes me feel like the reason behind all that is because it makes it cheaper to make, and it makes it easier to make, instead of fully realized ideas. Like I always wonder. Yeah.
I read that they built the entire set from scratch, and that to me screams expensive. But maybe I'm wrong with that thought. I don't know.
Well,
like
expensive,
like the town.
Expensive is relative in terms of like, Hollywood and like what we consider expensive. So like a show like this might have like a $7 million budget, per episode or whatever, or it might have a $200,000 per episode budget. Who knows? You know what I mean? But the thing is like they only had to build that set once if they did build it. right? It's not like they have to build it every episode. So if they're going in and they're going to shoot 13 episodes and they know it and they spend, $1 million building a set, that's just a one-time thing, right? And then you amortize that across all episodes, So it theoretically actually makes the show much cheaper than having it in a confined setting, opposed to, other projects where you have to constantly find locations or build a new set or whatever it is, It's like sitcoms, I think, are much cheaper to do because they're never changing the lighting. They're never going anywhere other than, this person's house and that person's house or whatever, or the living room, the coffee shop. They're all pre-built sets that are all strung near, right next to each other kind of thing. And I didn't know that they built that set. I just figured they just found like an abandoned town in Canada and, that's where they shot it, whatever. But I guess it's not terribly safe.
I'm not 100% sure, but I watched one of Troy's interviews and
oh yeah,
that's what I got from it, that it was built from scratch.
Oh, okay. Who did he interview? I don't recall.
The actress that plays Fatima.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah. That's pretty cool. If they did build it, the set looks great. It really does. And that would make sense for the house collapsing episode, whatever that was. But, and then also the fact that there is no motel there, but there's a pool, which is funny.
Oh, did I not notice that till last week?
Yeah, I don't know. I noticed it from the first episode. I just figured it was like so derelict. It was just missing, like it's already been destroyed or whatever. And that I think there are things like that I think are built into probably the overarching story idea. Like I'm assuming that's sort of like foreshadowing. This is all in your head, or this is like Dark City, where it's like this other entity sort of creating a town to resemble what they feel life is, and these people are being experimented on, kind of thing. And that's my personal kind of take on it. I think that's the direction it's going to go. Whether it's a very sophisticated like entity, or whether it's sleep-induced, nightmare dreams or aliens or whatever it might be. I just feel like there is that sort of like higher power entity that is like studying them. That's the vibe that I get from this, whatever it might be. I don't want to spoil anything for people, but the last 2 episodes of season 3 that have come out kind of could change that idea a little bit for me, or it might reinforce it. It's hard to know right now, but either way, it really doesn't matter because the show itself is pretty entertaining. They keep you on your toes. And I think one of the things Carly probably likes about it is the constant plot twists that are involved with it. There's always something sort of happening or changing. And I'm curious what your thoughts on that are, Carly, because for me, it's like, I wonder how many of those things that they bring up are actually going to play into the overarching story, because certain things like Victor and counting the steps from the house to the tree and noticing that the trees are moving. Like, that's kind of a big detail in my opinion, but they've never really come back to it. And I'm just curious, like, what do you think of that? And maybe that's just sort of like a casualty of war of television writing and different writers, or maybe that's something that's in the show Bible. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say as an audience.
I don't think it is, because part of the fun, I think the biggest asset that this has, but potentially its biggest downfall when it ends, is you could have 10 fans in a room and they could have 10 completely different theories, ranging from it's in somebody's mind, they're in a coma, it's time travel, it's God, it's this, it's that. Every single one of them theories fits. There's not many that you can argue against. And then each kind of episode will give root to each of those theories, but it won't give you enough to confirm or deny it. And I know that it can make people really frustrated because further along the line, as people get more involved, they start to think that they own the narrative and they own its characters and they want answers, and they'll get really mad if their theory doesn't end up fitting. So that's the dangerous aspect of it. But I fucking love it. I have been down a rabbit hole. I've got like 4 notepads of different theories, and in the end I just gave up and thought, I just need to enjoy it for what it is. Because when Father Cattry was in it, I was convinced it was like he was God or it was something to do with the devil. I was absolutely convinced. Then he went away. I was like, oh, okay. Then he came back. I was like, oh, my theory's back on the table. And I just love that aspect of you can't work it out. Like, and there's so many little moments that I keep going back to, and they're just small little interactions, like you say with Victor in the trees. So when I think it was Michael was in the tomb thing with Boyd, he said something that referenced what Father Cattry said previously, and he'd said something like, "My knees aren't what they used to be," and this Michael character said something exactly the same. "My eyes aren't what they used to be," or something. And I'm looking at that as a writer, going, is that a link back for something bigger that's going to come out of nowhere, and that's why it's not been touched on? Or is that just a familiarity and kind of like a red herring throw-in? Like a baiting and switching? But because they're not pushing it too much, I'm quite happy to just kind of roll with it. And like I say, I enjoy coming up with theories. Like, is it in Victor's mind? Is it Victor's stories? That's where I'm at now. Is it, are the monsters physical manifestations of the people's demons? Is that what it is? I don't know. I've kind of given up trying because I don't want to take the fun out of it.
Sure. No, I get that. You know, when you were talking about like my knees aren't what they used to be, or my eyes aren't what they used to be, you know, I also noticed that, and I have a completely separate theory not related to story with that, and it's something that I notice across television shows, watching TV. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure that this is true, but it could be if you go back and look who wrote the episodes. I think that those are either ideas that a specific writer who wrote an episode were trying to get into the show, or it's their way of making their trademark.
Yes.
Of like saying, hey, I wrote this, or it's lazy writing where they're just using this one voice when they write and they regurgitate lines, sort of thing. You know, because it's like one thing to have a character talk a certain way and use specific words like that, and that's how they speak. But when you cross over into other characters speaking the same like that, it comes off as lazy writing unless they find a way to make it a part of the story.
Yeah, it is hard to say that it's lazy writing though, because I've caught myself doing that. I haven't, you know, if I've had a script or something and I've had a line that's stuck in my head, and then 5 years later I've written something else, I find a variation of that line coming out. And sometimes it's, especially in like a fast-paced environment on TV, if nobody else catches it, it's kind of like a writer quirk, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get it. The problem with that is that in today's TV viewing consumptionism, it's so much easier to notice when people binge watch shows.
Yeah.
So that's inherently becoming an issue, I think, in the enjoyment of a show that's, you know, maybe already done with, or a few seasons are out and you sit down and you go to watch them. It's kind of weird or off-putting when they're using like the same language over and over again. As opposed to where you used to have to watch a show an episode a week and then wait for the next season, for 6 months or whatever. And then an episode, you don't notice it, but then when you're sitting down and you're watching like 5 hours of From, and you notice 3 different characters use the same line, it's a little like, what? And I'm not saying From does that. That's really honestly the only instance that I noticed of it was the one that you're talking about in the crypt thing. But
yeah, the only one I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. But other shows are much, much worse at, with that sort of thing. But that was my personal theory. I honestly thought in my own head that it has to do with the specific writer. Like they're either, because, I read something a while back, and I think you might enjoy this, but it had to do with Matlock and Diagnosis Murder, where there are.
Carry on.
Huh? Carry on.
Carry on. I'm ready. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the pilot, I think there's an episode that's almost verbatim the same episode in Matlock and in Diagnosis Murder. Like it's the same dialogue, the same situations. Like it's almost the exact same thing. And I found it's the same writer, or supposed to be the same writer. They just regurgitated another script, crossing over to another show or something like that. And I'm thinking about that going like, well, as many scripts as a television show writer makes, they probably have drawers of scripts that they just sort of like take and rebrand for something else. And it probably, because it's tight deadlines, right? I will bet you anything that happens quite a bit, where something just gets pushed over to whatever new show they're working on or whatever, and a script gets regurgitated, or whoops, I forgot this one was produced, or whoever, maybe it's an earlier draft. I don't fucking know. But there are instances out there where episodes of TVs of completely different shows have the almost identical stories, of course they're shot slightly different because it's a different director and, it's a different show, but it's really strange.
Yeah,
I have no idea how I got there. But
there'll be certain writers as well who enjoy writing for a particular character, because that would be my issue. If I was on like a show, I'd be like, no, I'm writing this story and it's happening because that's what I want. And they'd be like,
yeah, that's what I was saying. You'd be fired super quick.
Oh man, I wouldn't even make it past day one. I'd be like, I'm writing for that guy. We're killing him. Oh, really? Are we?
Speaking of writers, there's this new documentary that came out. Sorry to sideswipe you there, but there's a new documentary that came out about a writer from Grey's Anatomy who did all of this like lying and stuff. I think it's The Anatomy of a Liar or something like that is what it's called. But check it out. It's on Peacock. It's super crazy that anybody has the balls to do this, much less like people getting sucked into the world of this person is crazy. But anyway, carry on.
My brain's just overloaded now with what did he lie about? Oh, it's like, so they'll have as well, situations change. People that have left or were available may not be available anymore. So all those things could have been directions that they were going in. They could have been putting the feelers out for what the fans were looking at. They might have retracted back to the most unlikely thing to kind of keep the mystery going and keep them unsuspecting. I think there's so many different avenues that could have gone, and they could have been writing for each one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it either way. I don't think it doesn't work in its favor. It doesn't not work in its favor. Sorry, it gives everybody a nice little, like I say, like a little snippet or a little red herring or a little trail for themselves to follow.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I guess that's up to you as the writer if that's what you're doing. Right? Like, I don't know. Not sure. I'm gonna stick with my lazy writing thing. So
yeah, there's always ways to sneak something past people. I've done it with you. And then afterwards you've gone, hey, told you to cut that. Oh, did you? Oopsie, forgot. Guess we can get that guy back then, yeah?
I knew you were doing that. All right. I want to go through. So you spoke a tiny little bit about what you thought made it noir for you. And I'm doing this solely for Troy. So Troy, if you're listening, and if anybody out there on the internet wants to bother Troy about hating film noir, because he hates film noir, he hates the word, he vomits at the sound of the word noir. Yeah, so if you're ever around him and you want to see him vomit, I don't know why you would, just say film noir. It'll be an instantaneous guttural reaction from him. Guarantee it. So hit him up on social media. Yeah, hit him up on social media and just message him, film noir. Yeah. Anyway, this is strictly for Troy. I went down and I made a list of the things, of the reasons why this show does have a connection to noir. However, what I did realize is most shows today have a lot of connection to noir.
So technically I'm still correct.
I think so in a certain way. I don't think that is the vibe that they were specifically trying to go for. I do think they're going for that sci-fi horror mystery kind of vibe, but in doing so, inherently, I think with mystery, it's hard to get away from the tropes of noir. And so here's my thing. I don't think the atmosphere and style is noir at all, in my personal feeling. So Troy, that's a check mark for you. However, plenty of noirs are very claustrophobic in setting. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. You can just feel the walls kind of closing in on the characters. And that's kind of where we have here. That's the whole basis for the show. Urban decay and gloom is a very strong film noir contender. And we have that on full display in From. As you were talking about the built set and everything, that's 100% what we got going on. There's lots of themes of isolation and entrapment in this show, which goes along with that sort of isolation. Claustrophobic sort of setting. A lot of these characters, even though they're sort of building a community inside this town, there's a lot of time that the show spends with them being isolated, either by themselves or with one other person, or even them and the creature, of the show. So there's a sort of isolation, but also that inescapable environment, which is very strong noir narrative. Not only the physical isolation, but also psychological isolation, what this show heavily deals with. And that's also a very strong noir contender. The moral ambiguity, which is very heavy in the film noir narrative. This show deals with a lot of moral ambiguity, but also it does deal with the sort of righteous morality as well. So it's less noirish with that than it could be. So I would probably lean towards, give that check mark to Troy on that one as well. Because I think it's more of like the secondary characters that kind of end up with moral ambiguity issues more so than the people that we're mostly following.
Boyd was pretty like 50-50 about putting that guy in the box for a little while. And then the priest was like, you need to put the guy in the box.
Sure. But was that morally I'm not sure.
I don't really
I'm not sure that was morally,
to be honest.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. I think that
so it's ambiguous.
I guess so. But yeah, I guess so. But that's one out of many things that happen in the show. So I would say that there are times of it. So it's there, but I don't think it's an overarching kind of theme of the show, moral ambiguity. because I think they're all sort of
fair
like
enough.
trying to work together, except for the one dude in the bus. You know, but you always have to have the asshole character at some point, right? Like you got to have some adversary that's outside of the main villain. So that'll always come up in shows. But I think I would still give that to Troy because I don't think that that's a very strong theme in the show. However, they do have a ton of flawed characters, and that's really the basis of the show. Is in any ensemble cast is the sort of diversity of characters, which I do think is great for a certain thing, but sometimes it can get really muddy and convoluted and feel very not slapstick, but what's like a slapdash? I don't know, just slapped together quickly, you know, and it doesn't connect to anything really. It's just sort of like, this is the story of the week sort of thing. And it doesn't really tie in. So it feels disconnected is what I'm trying to say sometimes. And I don't like that. But they do have a lot of flawed characters and questionable decision-making from the characters. So I'd say it's very strong and questionable decision-making, but maybe not necessarily moral ambiguity. Definitely has the anti-hero protagonist. That is, again, one of the main strong basis for the show. You know, the reluctant leader. Very strong with the personal demon scenario. Oh, for sure. He's so great in the show. Yeah. I was excited when he showed up in Z Nation. Is that what it was called? The zombie show on Sci-Fi or whatever. He was like in the first episode or first couple episodes or something. And I was like, oh, cool. He's such a good actor, you know? And then I was so excited when he got this show, you know, as a lead too. Because he's just like, especially in the later seasons.
Wow.
In the later seasons, they really kind of let him shine, man. He's got some emotional chops there. So he's very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of characters definitely have personal demons, if not all of them, right? Even the kids. Doesn't really have the femme fatale. I'm not seeing that.
I was thinking about this one.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find a femme fatale, so I started looking at it a bit differently, and I was wondering, is it Sarah, but not in the normal visual way that you would have a femme fatale, because like now with the really, really beautiful relationship that she has with Victor, that's only just recently been allowed to kind of flow and come together, she's quite influential in a lot of the events, and she's driven quite a lot of the narrative, but kind of from the background. She's not been pushed in your face too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wrestling with, could she kind of fit into that kind of character, perhaps, in a new way?
Well, I think you're presenting that as like you're not very non-committal. Do you think she is, or do you not? Because like saying things like
non-committal is my thing.
Yeah, I noticed. This is your Brit speak. Like, could she? Perhaps, maybe. You know, I'm just like, what do you think? Tell us, Carly. No,
in my head, she kind of does, but obviously, I'm not very technical. I'm not very knowledgeable, so it's kind of just
stop it.
In my mind, that's kind of how I perceive her. But I could just be trying to fit her into a box that fits what I enjoy watching. So,
yeah, I wouldn't say she's a femme fatale. I don't think there's anything that sort of resonates with that sort of idea of having, malicious intent.
Well, we've seen some femme fatales that didn't have malicious intent, but were still incredibly dangerous.
Well, maybe. I mean, but I don't know. I think that's a real fine line to like put her in that category. But I mean, if it is for you, that's totally fine. I don't personally see her as that way. Well, maybe the audience at home could weigh in on that. But me personally, I'd give this a check mark to Troy, because I think I think for any good noir, you need to have like a very solid femme fatale archetype. To really hit it home, like that. And that's my personal thing. Cause not all film noirs have a femme fatale per se. But my personal sort of like outlook on film noir and what I enjoy, it would have a very strong femme fatale archetype for sure. And intertwined with the lead, whoever the lead male character is, or female character, even if you go to like movies like Bound or something. But I just, that's one thing I think is kind of missing for me in this. They definitely have tons of mystery and suspense, right? They're unraveling secrets and twists and all kinds of things, and that's huge with film noir. Psychological themes, paranoia, fear, very, very strong in this show, and that's a very prevalent thing in film noir. Dream sequences, dream-like sequences, dream sequences that are very much intertwined with the realities that are going on with the character. Those are also very prominent in film noir. Not always, but a lot of times they are. Fatalism, very strong film noir aspects, senses of doom, inevitable consequences, just that sort of like nihilism, and we're all going to potentially die, end of the world sort of like feel.
And they actually do. This is the first show for a long time where nobody is safe. Genuinely.
Yeah. I think that started becoming, because, we talked a little bit about that in the Millennium After Millennium documentary, when they, killed off Peter Wilde. That was like, 1998, and even at that time, Chris Carter was talking about, this started becoming the fashionable thing to do, was killing off like main characters. And I think that all came about as ratings grabs, trying to get people to watch the show, and like, but like you said, nobody is safe, and, anybody could be taken out, even a lead character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's nice though, because in this setting, like, you can still take out the lead character and he can still be the lead character, because the rules haven't been established enough to rule it out. So it's a very clever take on doing that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that it's got two things going for them. One is that they start off the show showing you that no one's safe, right? So if the lead gets taken out, like, it's going to suck, but you're probably not going to be super surprised if that happens. And I hope that doesn't, because, he's just so good in the show. But, I think that they've set it up in such a way that from the very beginning, as where most shows just, they get to like season 5 or 6, and we're like, hey, you know what? Let's just kill off the lead and maybe it'll give us some ratings, whatever. Which I think ends up being that late in the show kind of alienates people,
Yeah, like shock value. It's like, we know why you've done it. Yeah.
Sure. But I guess, it worked for Grey's Anatomy. It's still on season like 500, but I don't know. I got a whole bunch here, so I'm just going to keep going. Complex interpersonal relationships. It's another film noir trope. There's tons of that in this. Conflicted alliances. You've got the house on the hill, where some people are at, and then you got the other people that have their own homes, and they're at an internal sort of community war between each other with different ideas of how to be. Visual symbolism, that's pretty heavy in noir, and in this they have not only visual but physical symbolism with the talismans and things like that, and the symbols that people have seen in other parts of the show. I don't think it's very strong in the visual filmic quality of it, like the play of light and shadow and things like that. There are occasions, but this type of show really kind of just plays it straight in terms of that. I don't see a whole lot of that sort of like feel. So I'd say another check mark to Troy for that. There's no inner monologues in this show, right? There's no narrator or unreliable narrator. So
disagree, but
Really?
it's not an overall. Yeah, no, it's mainly from an episode. It's not overall, so it probably doesn't count.
Yeah, I don't think it's
They're in charge of
ongoing...
narrating their own kind of past. Like when Father Cattrey's talking about what happened with him when he, for all intents and purposes, beat somebody to death. Well, did he? Was that him? Like, he's the one in charge of telling the story, and frankly, I don't find it that trustworthy that that's what he's saying.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm getting from.
Yeah, maybe we'll find that out
I don't
later
know.
on. I don't think that's a big enough theme throughout the show, though, to like really...
Yeah, that's fair enough.
To really put it in there. But so I would give that to Troy as well. There's really no narration or unreliable narrator kind of thing. Crime and lawlessness, that's not super prevalent, but there's a few things, like the Peaches. I think it was Peaches in like the first episode or whatever. And, people later on in the series raiding the diner and, they're
getting stabbed.
Yeah. There's definitely some elements of it, but I don't think it's a huge, again, arc in the story. So I would give that one to Troy as well. Like there's no prevalent, just flat out crime and lawlessness in this show. They're all trying for the most part to get along. They're all trying to be decent humans. But of course they have different opinions and ideas. The violence and danger is super high, but it's more on a supernatural level. So there is that, but I think it's a bit different than normal noir. So I really wouldn't count that in our favor either. So I'd give that another check mark to Troy. I think there's a lot of ethical dilemmas. You were speaking of one, with them putting them in the box. And, so survival versus morality is a huge consideration in the show per se. I don't necessarily think it's moral ambiguity, but I definitely think that they weigh the ideas of our survival or my survival versus is this morally correct? So I always look at it like they seem to have a strong sense of what is moral, but also we might just have to do this because if we don't, we could all die, There's not a lot of corruption in this. So as far as crime noirs go, I think we're kind of out of this check mark to Troy. Social commentary. I don't know that there's social commentary in this yet. I know we're already on the 3rd season, but other than social community interactions and maybe how we treat one another, I'm not seeing social commentary on the large unless I'm just not smart enough to grasp it. Maybe there's some sort of bigger picture that this is an allegory for something, but I haven't quite latched onto that personally. Tons of existential questions. Oh, you have something on that?
No, I was just thinking.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to get a check back from Troy, but I'm coming up blank.
Okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's okay. I still think we're winning here. Existential questions. Characters' plights raises questions about purpose, existence, human condition, philosophical undertones, things like that. I think that's a huge thing in noir. Yeah, and I think we got a ton of that in From. And that's the end of my list. So I think that I can absolutely understand where he's coming from for face value of this not being noir, because it's definitely a sci-fi horror show, but it does have a lot of shareable tropes of noir in terms of character and plotting, I would say. Maybe not even necessarily plotting, but just events, because they're not all like plot based, but just things that happen between characters, but aren't necessary to the overall plot of the show. But yeah, so I definitely think that it has more noir tropes than it doesn't. But it's hard to look past the look of the show. Doesn't really feel noir to me, at least, at all. But however, I think we kind of win that battle.
We do. But then here's another like twisty plot point. Did we actually win? Because the whole reason that we're doing this podcast is because Troy told me to watch From. So did we win or did he win?
Oh, that's a good point. Touche, Troy.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
All right. And the other thing is the whole...
Are we the puppets?
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe we do win because the whole point of doing the podcast is to indoctrinate people into the noir, lexicon. So maybe we win. Maybe Troy is now a fan of noir because he's a fan of From, which we've already classified as noir.
Maybe. I'll take that.
I will too. You lose, Troy. You're a loser. Just kidding, man.
Also, thank you for letting me watch From.
Do you guys not have it out there?
No, but he told me about it.
Oh, because
he put it in my brain, and then I didn't realize, and then I went, "Oh my god, I'm watching this!" And he went, "Are you for real? I told you about 3 years ago." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Good, nice. All right, Carly. I think that we're ready for our. We're way over time today. Woo! We are ready for our Gen count rating. So, do you want to go first?
I think we can all guess what mine's going to be.
Suspense music. A 4. It's a 4.
How dare you?
You're giving it a 4.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I am not giving it 4.
You sure? Okay. What are you giving it?
I'm going to give it... Do you know what, actually? I'm going to be a rebel here.
Okay.
I was going to give it a 10. However, I know. That's the pause. However, I have not got over the fact that they killed Father Catry. So, for that reason, I'm going to give it a 9.
Well, I would argue they bring him back, right? We're already spoiling the show because they don't do that for a while. You've already ruined it for everybody. Actually, if you haven't watched the show already, like whatever. But
yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, they bring him back though, so maybe you can still give it a 10.
They don't bring him back nearly enough.
True.
But not being funny, I would very much have enjoyed a few episodes of like the man-pounding priest who murdered somebody and then had a bloody stained like outfit. I think something didn't ring true there. So because of the lost episode, I'm going to give it a 9.
Did you say man-pounding?
You did.
All right. A 9? Is that what you're settling at?
Stand firm. And also, justice for Gina, because she got murdered in the first episode. Nobody gave a shite. That woman was down there playing chess, feeding everybody. So, yeah, definitely a 9. No, justice for Gina and Father Catry. 9.
Okay. All right. I'm a little harder on it. I do love the show. I like watching it. I can't watch it at night because my wife doesn't want to I don't know. She doesn't like, it's weird. She doesn't want to watch shows like this before going to sleep, but yet we can put on true crime and fall asleep to it. So it blows me away. Like, we can't watch something fake that's outside the realm of possibility, but we can watch something where real people have murdered real people. It blows me away.
I'm the opposite, though. I'm like, I'm totally the opposite. I can just watch somebody's face getting ripped off and be like, oh, night. But I cannot even in the daytime watch like home invasion stuff because I'm like, straight, got to come home. Mate, I think the Mendes brothers are outside, can't cope.
The Mendes brothers didn't do, oh my God. Okay.
But it's whatever I'm watching in the moment. I'm like, oh my God, I've got Facebook. They got murdered through it. Shit. Get rid of the phones. It just gets in my brain.
That's funny. Well, I think that like for me, like, I really enjoy the show. I like it. This is my vibe. This is totally my jam. I love these kinds of shows. However, because there are other shows that have been done already that are just like it, in my opinion, you know, whether it's Wayward Pines or Persons Unknown or whatever, there's been a few of them. Even you could even argue Lost. I really feel like they're going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat kind of thing and really fucking surprise me with where the show is going. Cause I can see it crash and burning really fast. I can see them. I really hope that before they started this, they had the end goal in mind already. And I hope it's something huge and epic and different. You know, I really do. Because I think I just don't want it to be something like the end of Lost, you know, like I didn't think that was a problem per se, but, I just felt like, well, where else could it go at that point? You know, and everybody's mad and it's like, well, you know, oh, well, I guess, but like with a show like this, it's like they're introducing so many things and they're telling us this is reality without there being any foreshadowing or inkling of this isn't real. As far as I'm aware of, and maybe I'm just smart enough to catch it, but I'm not seeing any of that yet. And so my rating is really colored by that idea that I hope it doesn't crash and burn. And that's a terrible rating to give a show for something that hasn't happened yet, but I feel like that's going to happen. And so I'm going to only give from a 7. Just because, yeah, I know. And I thought a lot about this, but just because I'm worried that they're not taking care of the future. If that makes sense.
It's nonsense.
Hopefully that makes sense.
You know that when
maybe.
These things go to the network, they have to have a series Bible. They have to be able to tell them like where it's going and what's happening.
Sure, but those change too. And that's the problem with it. They may have, and maybe it won't change, and maybe they get, you know, or maybe it gets canceled before that ever happens, or maybe there's a lot of maybes. Maybe some character becomes super popular and like, oh, well, we can't do that now. You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things that can happen. So how they handle those challenges and how the show ultimately ends up ending, I think is going to sort of like color because it might end really badly. And that might be like, oh man, that was a terrible show, you know? But I don't know, like, because you get super invested in this mystery, you know, and you can get let down pretty easily, I think. And it all depends on how you're looking at it and what it is that you want to see. Like, I'm always like if they go something super wild, I would be really excited about that. Like if they turn this into like a HP Lovecraft kind of like thing, I would just be floored and that would be amazing to me. Right? Like interdimensional cosmic horror. I would be like, whoa, okay, they went there. That's amazing. But if they just turn this into like, oh, it was a dream, or everybody was dead, or you know what I mean? Like these common tropes, I'm going to be super disappointed. You know, I just will be. But because you've invested the time and the effort into this, and then it's just like they just fall back on something that's just so common and overdone, you know? So I hope it's something bigger.
I don't know how much damage that does in the long run, though, because like I always think this about the X-Files. You know how much I love the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
If the X-Files was on TV now, it would have been ripped to shreds by like season 5 and cancelled because people weren't getting the answers as quickly as they wanted. They tried different
times
things.
have changed for sure.
Tangents. And even when you watch the X-Files now and you think, whether you agree with how it ended or you don't agree with how it ended, people still love the show. They still love the characters. They might not appreciate what happened in the end, but they will still go back to season 1 and they will watch it from season 1 all the way through going, I hate these episodes. Still on my TV.
Yeah, I think with the X-Files in particular, like it's not the show's fault at all. I think people got so invested in the alien side of X-Files that they forgot that the show wasn't about aliens. Like that was just Mulder's like arc for a while. You know what I mean? The show was about unexplained phenomenon, whether that was Bigfoot or aliens or the black goo or super soldiers. Like it was about unexplained phenomenon, government conspiracies, that kind of thing. And I think people got tied up too much in, you know, in the alien conspiracy or whatnot, because, you know, I don't know, whatever, that it disappointed them, you know. But I do look at that as like being an audience issue, not the writer's issue, because the writers set it out from the very beginning, you know, on a certain 100%. Trajectory, you know. As to with From, the writers are also setting this off into a certain trajectory, which is like the absolute unknown. Like we're in complete unknown territory. We're in a town that has power and water, and there's no explanation as to why. We're in a place we cannot escape. You go down a road, you come back on the other side, or the same road, whatever it was. You have creatures who stalk the night, who can't enter your house because of a talisman. You know, like there are certain things that like, but the thing is, it's also weird is like they can be in the house before the talisman. Once the talisman is there, they're already in there. They're fine, which I didn't understand that. Like the episode in the barn, right? He shows up with the talisman, but they're still there and there's no problem. How did they get out? I don't know. You know, so there are things to still explain to make sense, and I wonder if they will. I wonder if the writers have thought about that. Oh, or is it a whoops, we fucked up? Who knows? But they have an opportunity to do something different. You know, just like Lost had an opportunity to do something different, to not fall back onto like, oh, this is a dream. Oh, this is the last seconds of us dying before we, you know, ascend to heaven or hell or whatever it is, or this is, you know, whatever. Like I feel like there's an opportunity to like really go out there and make this its own thing, and I'll be disappointed if they don't. That's all I'm saying. So right now I'm giving it a 7 just because I like it all. I like everything that they're doing, but I do have this like itch in the back of my brain that they're going to severely fuck it up for me personally. But to each their own. Each their own. So, all right, folks. Crowley gives it a 10-9, 9-10. But because Father was murdered and taken out too soon, it crushed her. So
it did.
She falls on a 9. And I give it a 7 just because I'm future tripping. I'm just future tripping. I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I'm hoping that we can come back and discuss the final episode of From in 5-10 years, and I changed my rating to an 11.
Jason, we in like 5 or 10 years, we won't even remember that we had a podcast. Never mind, remember to come back and do the final episode.
Oh no, things that I love, I remember. So I'll remember this one. Unless they really, and if they really piss me off, you better believe we're coming back to do a podcast. Even if the podcast was over 6 years before, we're going to have a special. Speakeasy Noir special.
Special.
Yeah. All right. There you have it, folks. 9 out of 10 and 7 out of 10. I hope you guys can try out the Nightfall or the Mystic Twilight if you're non-alcohol drinkers. And you can check out From if you haven't already. I know we did a lot of spoiling. I apologize. We suck at that. But just know that. It's just a thing. We suck at it. We're not going to get any better at it.
I don't apologize because you should be watching it, quite frankly. So
right. You should already be caught up on season 3. So yeah. It's not our fault. It's yours. All right, folks. Enjoy From and your drink, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
He's looking at you, kid.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Speakeasy NoirCast. Make sure to visit our website, resurrectionfilms.net, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, The Dark Side of Acting Up and The Dark Side of Acting Up Volume 2, now available on Amazon. Or you can check out one of our films, also available on Amazon Prime. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Speakeasy NoirCast.